Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wolfson. I'm so excited for today's interview. Today, I'm speaking with Max Cunningham. He is the founder and CEO of Sesh, which is a nicotine product that helps smokers and vapors quit those habits. So today's interview is obviously a little bit different. It is not focused on blockchain, crypto, or AI, but it's actually focused on a great product that's really quite interesting. Max talks all about statistics around smoking and vaping and how Sesh aims to solve these challenges for people that, smoke or vape. So I encourage you guys to watch and listen to this episode in its entirety and not to miss a thing. Before getting started with today's interview, I also want to take the time to remind you guys to hit subscribe, hit like, and stay in touch with me because I've got a whole lot more content coming your way and I don't want you to miss anything. Without further ado, let's get started with today's interview. Hey, Max, how's it going?
Hey, going great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for coming out here in person in Austin, Texas to do this podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So Max, this is a really exciting episode for me because you are the first non-crypto, non-blockchain guest that I have on the show.
Wow, I'm honored. I'm honored.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting episode.
Okay.
And I am excited to hear more about Sesh and what you are doing there. Before getting started, maybe tell our listeners about yourself, your background, and then we can talk a little bit more about Sesh.
For sure, yeah. So my background is a little bit unique. I was in the hospitality industry for a long time, very entrepreneurial. I started throwing all age parties when I was 15, kind of parlayed that into a job at a bar where I worked as a busboy and a dishwasher, worked my way up. When I was 23, I bought my first bar. This was in Vancouver, Canada, where I'm from, and thought that was my path. I ended up buying part of another bar when I was 25, continued to build the events company. All the while I was also working as a liquor rep. So I was going into liquor stores and selling, high-end scotch and stuff. And that was really fun in my 20s. And then by the time I was entering my 30s, I realized it was a very difficult business, the restaurant bar industry. It was hard to scale. And the lifestyle that comes with it can be very difficult. And so I was really looking for a pivot or career change. That was a scary thing at the time, but a friend of mine owned a marketing agency and he said, why don't you come work for me? We just got a new client. And I said, okay, great. Who's the client? And he said, well, it's Big Tobacco, but they're launching next generation products. And this was really when Juul was starting to get popularized in the US. These were less harmful products trying to transition people away. And so I said, okay, let's do it. And that was really kind of how I got into this category in particular. And, I'm happy to go through the rest of the story, but that gives you kind of the high level.
Sure. So for our listeners and actually I'm unfamiliar, you said Juul was just getting started in the US. What is Juul?
Juul is a vape. So it's like an e-cigarette.
Okay.
It looks, very similar to like a USB stick. It was incredibly popular. That's what Juul is.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Sesh. What is Sesh? What do you do with Sesh? Why did you start this company?
Yeah. So Sesh, it's a modern nicotine company. We sell modern nicotine products. We don't sell any cigarette products. We don't sell any e-cigarette products. The reason I started the company is because, ironically, when I started working at that marketing agency, I'd used some form of tobacco, but I hated cigarettes. I never smoked cigarettes. Mm-hmm. But I used chewing tobacco, playing sports, etc. I switched to vaping and I couldn't stop vaping. I tried everything. I went to the local pharmacy. I picked up, Nicorette and picked up other cessation brands, and nothing was appealing and nothing really worked for me personally. And so that is kind of where the idea came from. And I just thought, oh man, if I'm struggling this much as a 30-year-old, I can't imagine what other folks are going through. And, there's got to be more people out there that are having the same issue. And so really when we started Sesh, it was, how do we rethink about the category? How do we kind of modernize the category? Because now the landscape has changed so much, and there's no innovation in the smoking cessation or quitting smoking category in decades. And so that was really where the idea was born.
I see. So you were vaping, I don't know if you'd say you were addicted, but you were doing it a lot.
Yep.
And you needed a solution to that.
Correct.
So I'm sure you probably tried like other products, right? Like as you were going through this struggle, if you call it a struggle, but
it's definitely a struggle.
Okay. Okay. I've never, I'm not a smoker, and
Okay.
I've never been, I'm just addicted to other things like
Great.
shopping.
Yeah.
But anyways, so how is Sesh different from the other products that you were trying at the time? Like what makes it different, and what actually made it solve that issue?
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, this was, probably, 8 or 9 years ago. So the landscape looked a lot different than it does today. But at the time, and this was in Canada, there was really only your legacy cessation products, which is like the patch that goes on your arm that releases nicotine slowly. There's the lozenge, and then there's chewing gum. Those were kind of the formats that are commonly recommended if you're trying to quit smoking. And so those were the ones that I tried. And, the gum comes in a big, ugly white box, and it feels very clinical. It tastes awful. It's chalky. This was my personal experience.
And this was like 8-9 years ago,
Yeah.
you say? Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then there were the lozenges that were chalky and kind of left this weird like residue in your mouth. And so a friend of mine introduced me to a white pouch product out of Sweden. At the time, this wasn't, popular. There was people weren't talking about Zyn. It wasn't available in Canada at all. And I tried this white pouch product, and it was the first product I tried where I instantly stopped vaping. Now that's my personal experience. I'm not saying that that's going to work for everybody, but that was my honest journey. And that's what really made me think, okay, how do we commercialize these products in Canada? And I had no idea what I was doing at the time, but I just thought, oh man, this could be a huge opportunity and a really good way to help people that are struggling like I was. And I need to find a way to commercialize these products somehow.
So you discovered this product from Switzerland.
Sweden.
Oh, Sweden. Sorry.
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
From Sweden.
Yeah.
And you wanted to then commercialize that.
Correct.
Is that what you did with Sesh?
That was, it's, like many entrepreneurs and founders, it's a bit of a clunky journey. At least it was for me, where my first idea was like, I'm just going to find a product in Sweden and I'm going to commercialize it. And so I literally flew to Sweden, cold called some manufacturers, ended up getting a meeting somehow with a pretty well-known manufacturer in Sweden, and basically just showed up and told them, hey, I want to commercialize these products in Canada. And they were like, okay, great. Show me your plan. And I was like, what do you mean? My plan is here. I'm here. This is my plan. And so needless to say, I got, kind of laughed out of that room and had to come back and really then formulate a plan. And serendipitously, I got introduced to a guy by the name of Thomas Eriksson through a mutual contact. Thomas Eriksson is a Swedish inventor, and he actually invented the white pouch. So he invented the formula for Zyn, which is the most popular pouch brand today. And just got introduced to him and flew back down to Sweden, met with him, and we ended up partnering with Thomas, and we actually built Sesh from the ground up. And so that was a really, really fun project. And, there was no focus groups. It was just me at the time. And so I was really trying to find a product that I liked. I tried everything else that was on the market. Most of the products I tried were really high alkaline, so they burned, or there was too much flavor. You got all the nicotine up front, so I really wanted something that felt balanced, and that's what we ended up building with Sesh.
So with Sesh, what is it? Is it a gum? Is it what do you do with it, and how do you use it? Now I'm curious, because you're talking about this white pouch that's supposed to help you from vaping and smoking. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So is that the white pouch?
Yeah. So this is the white
Okay.
pouch. So basically it's, there's about 10 ingredients in the pouches. So you have your nicotine, the nicotine can be a different complex. We have a proprietary nicotine complex. Then you have fillers, you have flavors, you have pH adjusters, we have moisture enhancers, but really there's about 9 or 10 ingredients. And so they're very similar to like a nicotine chewing gum, much more similar than to a cigarette.
Can I see it?
Yeah, of course.
Cool. Just want to show everybody. This is really cool. So this is what the product looks like.
Yep.
And then you open it. And then what do you do with it? You just stick it on the back of your tongue, or how does it actually work?
So you put it in between your gum and your cheek right here.
Okay.
And you just leave it in there, and it lasts for 30 minutes, and it slowly releases the nicotine through your oral mucosa.
Interesting.
Into your bloodstream.
Interesting. So when did Sesh really start taking off? Like, when was it? I mean, you went to Sweden, you did all of this, you finally had a plan.
Yeah.
You had someone to partner with. When did it start taking off?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was so difficult early days because keep in mind, there was still a lot of stigma. Even today, there's still stigma. You know, nicotine is very, very closely associated with tobacco, cigarettes, which are, you know, probably the most destructive product ever. And so, you know, there was a lot of red tape to get through. But we got our first kind of prototype from Thomas, and we launched it in 3 small stores. I basically went door to door to traditional tobacco stores, cigar shops, etc.
Canada?
In Canada.
Okay.
We ended up getting 3 stores, and they carried it. And, you know, I didn't really know how it was going to go. I assumed that our customer was going to be somebody like me, like a 30-year-old professional, kind of, you know, trying to settle down, looking for something discreet, maybe starting a family. And it was funny. One of our first customers was a police officer, and he ended up telling everybody on his squad about the product. And next thing you know, we sold out in the first week in those 3 stores. And then we had a lineup of police officers when we restocked. And so it was just really interesting to see that the types of folks that are looking for these products. And, you know, it's busy professionals. It can be first responders, people in high stress jobs, that value that discreetness, that don't want something to interrupt their day, that don't want to have to go outside to have a smoke. So yeah, that was kind of the first signal I got, or piece of traction. But it didn't really start taking off then, because we got a letter from Health Canada saying, hey, you can't sell these products. There's, you know, a lot of regulatory work you have to do since it's a new dosage form. And so we had to pull all of our products. We had to pivot. We had to launch a nicotine chewing gum in Canada, which we did successfully. And then we ended up launching our pouch product in the US. And we had to do a ton of regulatory work, you know, clinical studies, talks, behavioral studies. So it was much more complex than I had initially thought. And so we had to do a lot of the groundwork, which took a couple of years. And then the category started to really heat up. And that's when we really started to see traction with our products.
Interesting. So is Sesh, is this product now legal in Canada, or is it still under regulatory scrutiny there, but it's okay in the United States?
Correct. Yeah. So the regulatory frameworks are very complex. Every country has a different view on these products. So for example, in Canada, these are viewed as quitting smoking products. So these are cessation products. They're carried in pharmacies. In the US, pouches in particular are viewed as more recreational products. So you can't make any claims around smoking cessation. So different lenses for how they look at these products. And yeah, in Canada today, we still don't have our pouch authorized. We sell a nicotine chewing gum across the country in pharmacy, grocery, convenience. There's only one pouch brand that's been authorized to date in Canada. So we're working on it. Hopefully we'll get in there soon, but yeah, there's just a lot of things to do.
Interesting. So question is, so Sesh is, you know, legal and you can buy it in the United States. Can you buy it in Sweden? Can you buy it in Europe? Can you buy it anywhere else?
Yeah. So actually we just launched Sesh in the UK.
Okay.
So we're in all the WH Smith travel stores. There's lots of other brands, not Sesh in particular. Sweden is the birthplace of these products. So if you go to Sweden, it's pretty interesting. Over 50% of people that use nicotine are using white pouches. And so if you think about that in the US, it's over 50% of people are smoking cigarettes. So it's totally flipped in Sweden, and it's really interesting to see that. And when you go into a convenience store, you see the back wall, and no longer is cigarettes the predominant thing you see. It's white pouches.
Interesting.
And so that landscape has changed. And for me, that was kind of a crystal ball into the future of what North America could be.
Yeah. And it's also interesting because at least it's been my experience when I'm traveling to Europe and the Middle East.
Yeah.
Everybody smokes.
Yeah.
Everybody smokes. So it seems like a product like Sesh would be actually a great thing to have.
Yeah.
When you come back to the US, you're like, oh, nobody's smoking, right? And like, but there, you're in the street, everybody's smoking. So it seems like it would do really, really well in Europe, Middle East, and places where smoking is just so common.
Yeah. In Asia, I mean, the opportunity is massive. And I strongly believe that this will be the future of nicotine consumption. I really hope that we'll see, continued decline in cigarette smoking, not just in the US, but globally. And to your point, I mean, you go to Europe and it's like everywhere you go, you see people on patios smoking. There's not as much public scrutiny. Even with vaping in North America, if somebody's beside you, people are rolling their eyes, you're going to say something, there's clouds. So we really value discreetness. And that's really something people are looking for here. Whereas in Europe, it's still kind of socially accepted.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's like as if, if you don't smoke, it's almost weird, right?
Yeah.
Or that American, right? That doesn't smoke.
Yeah.
That doesn't stay out until like 4 a.m. We eat dinner at 6:30.
Yeah, they can spot you.
Yeah, for sure. But so is the goal with Sesh, is it just kind of, moving forward, not just only to help people get past that addictive nature of cigarettes and vaping, but to just entirely eliminate this moving forward, cigarettes and vaping? What is the goal here with Sesh that you want to accomplish?
Yeah, I think the goal is to accelerate the adoption of these products and give adult tobacco users, smokers, more alternatives, more choice, right? And so that's really the goal, is to create a product that resonates with the adult smoker that they are looking for. So that's the goal of Sesh.
And sorry, I might have asked you this. How long has it been legal to buy Sesh in the United States now?
So back in May 2022, the Biden administration passed legislation where any products on market had to submit what's called a PMTA application. So it's a pre-market tobacco application. And so that's what we submitted in May of 2022. And that includes, your clinical studies, your talks, your behavioral studies, everything to show that these products are appropriate for the protection of public health. So showing that, you can switch adult smokers to these products. And so that's when we submitted our application. And because we've submitted our application on that timeline, we're allowed to sell in the US.
When you say adult smokers, so how old do people have to be in order to purchase this?
21.
Okay, 21.
Yeah.
And then I'm assuming you can't just maybe you can walk into Target and buy Sesh, or is it a behind the counter situation? Like, how would somebody even do that?
Yeah, it's similar to cigarettes. So it's behind the counter.
Okay.
It's age gated. The average age of our customer is around 35. So we have a more mature consumer, somebody that values quality, that values transparency, that's going to read the label. People think that just because people have a vice or they drink or they smoke, that, they don't care what's in it. Right. And so that's something that really frustrated me with the category. When I was vaping, I could never figure out what the heck was in it. I knew that there were a lot of chemicals. I knew that it was bad for me, but I couldn't really understand. And so that's something that we really wanted to change with this category that historically hasn't had a lot of transparency. So how do we bring that into this category? And so that's something we believe in strongly at Sesh. We share all of our lab tests, our lab results on our site. We're upfront that nicotine is addictive. If you don't use nicotine, don't start. But if you're using cigarettes, if you're using other tobacco products, then hey, there's other options for you.
When you say transparent, so what do you mean? Do you mean like the ingredients and everything that's in Sesh is just listed
Correct.
On the box or online?
Correct. Yeah. Everything that we use is listed online. Everything is sourced from very reputable manufacturers. We run all of our lab results and we post them on our site so people can see. We test for, heavy metals, a number of other things in our products.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, no, that's interesting. what would you say because we're talking a lot about the regulations around Sesh and everything you've had to go through for that. What would you say the most difficult part of launching a product like Sesh has been in your founder journey? I mean, it seems like you've really come a long way from, that time when you went to Sweden and you started.
Yeah. Oh, I think the hardest part is just how complex the regulatory frameworks are to navigate, and they're constantly evolving. So it's not like the static thing, it's changing because these are new products. And so governments are also trying to figure out how to regulate these things appropriately. And so it's constantly evolving, and you have to be ready. And that's probably the most challenging thing. It's very capital intensive. It takes a lot of patience. It oftentimes feels like you're banging your head against a brick wall. It moves really slowly. And you just have to be patient, and you have to do the right thing, and make sure, all your ducks are in a row. And then over time, it's slowly, you start to get traction, and it can be slow and hard and expensive, but if it works, it's incredibly valuable. And there's a lot of defensibility in it.
Yeah. So Max, that's really interesting stuff that you're talking about. Let's talk a little bit about the fundraising process and like who's backing Sesh and how did that work out, given that this is like, such a regulated industry and product.
Yeah. So fundraising was very difficult. I'd never raised money before. I'd started a few businesses, but had never raised money. And it really started with bootstrapping. It started with small checks, with friends and family, with whoever believed in what we were doing. It wasn't until I realized just how complex and how expensive the regulatory costs were going to be that we needed to find a capital partner. And so we decided to go to the venture route. I cold emailed hundreds of venture firms, got a ton of no's, got 2 maybes. Both the maybes happened to be in Austin. And so I said, you know what, maybe if I just go to Austin and get on the ground there, I can figure out a way to make this work. And so I did. And I emailed them back and said, hey, I happen to be in Austin if you want to go for coffee. And I ended up closing both of those investors. And that's what led us to our major partner, which is 8VC, which is a venture fund out of Austin, an incredible firm, really expertise in regulated categories. So they've been super helpful, and they've led our last 2 rounds.
Wow. And
so it was just kind of one of those things, again, increasing our surface area for luck, putting myself in the right place at the right time, and getting a bit lucky.
Right. Definitely. It kind of makes sense though with Austin. I feel like when I think of Austin versus San Francisco, where I live part-time, there's a lot of lifestyle, health, wellness companies here, and a lot of that, and, versus SF where it's more tech and AI and crypto and blockchain. Yeah. So would you say that Sesh fits into that lifestyle category in terms of products? And is it like a wellness thing? Would you consider it to be something like that?
Yeah, we have to be really careful around wellness or health claims with these products because they contain nicotine. Nicotine's addictive. So we can't market this as, wellness or a health product. And certainly that's not our intention. But definitely it's a less harmful alternative for people that are current adult tobacco users that are trying to find another alternative. I think Austin's an incredible place, especially for CPG products. And I love Austin because it feels small, like there's a small enough community. So it's not like this kind of overwhelming big city vibe when you get in, but there is some very dynamic people here and entrepreneurs. And once you kind of get into the community, it's really cool.
Okay, you said CBG products. What does that mean?
Yeah, consumer products.
Okay.
So just fast moving consumer products, like pouches, or, because you referred to kind of wellness or health products, etc.
Yeah, you can tell that I'm so focused on the tech industry.
I keep thinking about
but it's so interesting to me. And I do think that, it makes sense that you ended up in Austin. I mean, and I've spent a lot of time here in Austin. I did my undergrad at UT, grew up in Dallas. So I feel like this is definitely a good place for something like Sesh to have found its ground, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's been incredible. Everybody was super welcoming. Like I said, it just felt like the right place to be. You know, I went to LA for 3 months and tried it there and just couldn't really get, like, it didn't feel like I was getting any traction. And so I went home and I was like, oh, that didn't work.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, I just had a feeling about Austin. I kept hearing about it. I got those 2 maybes from the investors. I was like, maybe there's something here. And I just kept turning over rocks.
Right. I was reading, and I don't know if this is something that you can disclose or not. Now, aren't there some celebrities backing Sesh as well? Or was that something that I made up?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually, it was very cool. Post Malone, Diplo, a number of other folks, and a lot of them approached us, which was pretty incredible. I mean, Post Malone's a chain smoker.
Oh.
He smokes on stage basically every performance.
Okay.
And with Diplo, same thing. He approached our team, which is cool because I'm just, you know, a fan of music and a fan of these guys, and the fact that they wanted to participate and wanted to join this journey with me was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
What are some misconceptions when people hear of, you know, a nicotine product, right? Like, what are some misconceptions that people think that, you know, that's a challenge for Sesh and that's a challenge for sales?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest misconception with Sesh and with this category in general is that nicotine and cigarettes are the same thing. People typically bucket cigarettes with white pouches, nicotine pouches, with gums, with chewing tobacco. They group it all in one bucket. Mm-hmm. And that's just not the case. There's a risk spectrum, a harm spectrum. You know, you have cigarettes on one side, which are the most harmful, the most destructive. And then all the way down at the end, you have white pouches, you have nicotine chewing gum, you have other dosage forms that are in this kind of zone. And, you know, nicotine, there's no known cancer-causing properties. The destruction and you know, the 500,000 deaths every year from smoking related diseases come from combustion. They come from tar that are caused by cigarettes. You know, it adds hundreds of billions of costs to the healthcare system every year. And so that's the biggest misconception and thing that, you know, is still we're trying to change today. And that made it very hard early days to go and raise money. But that's changing, which I think is a good thing.
It's interesting you say that because I have that misconception as well. And like, you know, and I told you, I'm not a smoker. I don't know much about these products, right? So when I think of nicotine, I think of cigarettes. And it's interesting that this is a nicotine product used to help people stop smoking and stop vaping. Why is it that nicotine can be used to help with those addictions, although there's nicotine in cigarettes and vaping? How can nicotine be used to combat that?
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, and there's also, you think about the, you know, we'll call them the legacy quit products like nicotine chewing gum, which is the number one recommended thing if you're trying to quit smoking, which has nicotine in it, right? So it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, why are you going to use that to quit nicotine? But there's actually a lot of science around it. And it's switching people from, you know, a very harmful dosage form to something that has a different risk profile where the nicotine isn't absorbed as quickly. So when you're smoking a cigarette or you're vaping, you're getting the nicotine in seconds. Whereas when you're using a pouch, it takes longer to absorb the nicotine. And when you're using a patch, it's the same thing. So it's just different products in different forms. And then you can slowly wean your way off by stepping down in strengths, by stepping down in milligrams. So that's the idea with traditional quit products like a nicotine gum.
So how many, if I was a smoker, how many of these would I do a day? Would I do 1 a day or 2 a day or just as I feel? Is there a recommended use and dosage?
Well, it depends, right? I mean, everybody's, you know, nicotine journey is different, but on average, the average consumer uses about 10 pouches a day.
Okay. And so I see, is it 20 pouches in this box that you brought here?
That's correct. Yeah. 20 pouches.
What is the retail price on this? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. It's around $6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Was there, you know, when you were creating the product and creating the packaging and all of that, can you tell us about that journey? Like, how did you, and also like the science, you're saying 10 a day. How did you come up with that?
Well, I mean, if you think about a smoker, they're typically smoking around 10 cigarettes a day.
Wow.
Medium to heavy smoker.
Uh-huh.
Now that changes, but it's really just thinking about the smoker and their journey of transitioning, and what we're seeing with the data.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So, moving forward, I'm curious to know what's next for Sesh. I mean, right now you've got this product, and then you mentioned that there's a gum in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what can we expect next? And, especially if we see less smokers and less vapors in this world, like, what's next?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because smoking and vaping are going down, but nicotine consumption isn't.
Huh.
So what it's telling us is that people are switching to these products. People are switching. They are starting to understand the risk spectrum. We just launched a refill bag on our site. So it's a 200 count bag. So instead of one can, you have 200 pouches, and there's a reusable can that comes with it. So more environmentally friendly. That's something we just launched that we're pretty excited about. And then, there's lots of things in the pipeline, lots of innovation work happening behind the scenes. But again, with the regulatory framework the way it is, it makes innovation much different. We have to think about it differently because it takes, in some cases, 5 to 7 years to get these products authorized in a given market. So that changes the thinking of, hey, if we put all of this money into a new concept, the landscape could be totally different by the time it's authorized. So you really have to kind of think ahead of the curve and think where the market is going to be 5 years from now, and then start building towards that.
Where do you see the market 5 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, my hope, and I believe that this is happening just based on what we're seeing, is that there's going to be a continued decline in cigarette smoking.
Okay.
More and more people are going to be declining at a faster and faster rate as more choice comes available, as more products become available. This is very important. And so that's the goal. Can we become the first smoke-free country in North America, in the US? That's considered an under 5% smoking rate. Today it's around the low teens. And so it's within reach. This is feasible in our lifetime, that it could be considered a smoke-free country. I mean, I think that's a pretty incredible goal to try to strive for. And so, hopefully we'll get there. Maybe not the next 5 years, but not that far away.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. And I do think that's why it makes sense to have this in the US, because and I don't know if you'd agree with me, but to say that same statement for Europe, where everybody smokes, I don't know what the smoking rate is there. Maybe you do. Much higher. I feel like everybody smokes there. To start in the US seems like a very logical choice. And then maybe we'd start slowly seeing Europe and the Middle East follow.
Yeah, well, we talked about this earlier, but public perception is so important.
Yeah.
Like stigma around your peers, that can change behavior. And certainly regulation can change behavior. I mean, here in the US and in Canada, you can't smoke anywhere. I mean, you have to go, you have to go 10 feet into a park and smoke on your own. So it's very different. Whereas in Europe, you're smoking on patios. It's much more accepted socially. Here, it's not. And so that's forcing people. I meet people all the time that you would never guess are smokers. And they are, they have to hide it.
Yeah.
Because it's not accepted.
Right.
And they're desperately looking for alternatives. And so that is the goal, is to give people something that, can hopefully make them switch.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'm excited to hear that. I'm also curious. This is an interesting question. So I know with crypto and blockchain, which is my specialty, we're seeing a lot of, or we had been seeing a lot of good changes under the Trump administration in terms of pushing the needle forward.
Yeah.
Has that been the same for the nicotine industry? Like, has the Trump administration been good for that or not good for that?
I think so. I think this administration has been great for it. I was in DC a month ago. And what I noticed is it's much more collaborative. I don't know if you saw that in crypto, but like they're actually talking to companies in the space, which is different.
Yeah.
And asking, hey, how can we make this process better? How can it be more efficient? Which I thought was really, really encouraging.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they're making it easier, but it does tell me that they're listening, which I think is a really important step forward.
That's interesting. No, it's funny with the crypto industry. We're also seeing more of a collaboration and crypto experts speaking with regulators to try to push legislation forward. So it's interesting to hear that that's also happening with the nicotine industry. And you may be one of those people in DC talking to the regulators and telling them why this is important for people in the United States.
Well, exactly. And I think it's important for non-big tobacco brands, independent brands. Our products are made in the US, they're made in Ohio. We have our own manufacturing facility. These are high quality products. You know, we're a small to medium sized business. It's important to have these independent players in the space. So it's not just dominated by a few big tobacco companies.
Yeah.
And so that's also what we're fighting for is, you know, an even playing ground.
Right, right. I know we're running low on time, so Max, maybe let's shift gears a little bit. I mean, you have such an interesting founder story, which maybe we'll do a follow-up episode to dig into that, just like your motivation was so high. What would you recommend or advice for other founders looking to start a product of some sort, or maybe even a nicotine product?
Yeah. My advice, I mean, it's always hard to give advice looking back. But, you know, just start. Like, I didn't know anything. I had no idea what I was doing. I just started picking up the phone and calling people and showing up.
Yeah.
And that's like, that learning curve is the fastest, just throwing yourself in the deep end. Like, that's something I was really comfortable doing.
Yeah.
And so once I had the conviction that this was going to be the future, that's when I just said, okay, I'm just going to go all in. And that really helped me, I think. And that's the advice I would give is if you're confident in something and you think that there's value and you think it can help people, then just go.
Curious, any technology behind this product, anything, or are we going to see anything AI related? Are we going to start seeing, you know, accepting Bitcoin or USDC for this? I mean, I'm just very curious. I can see maybe some sort of an AI element. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's certainly at our company and just, I'm sure you're experiencing every company is changing,
right,
where we're starting to integrate AI into everything that we're doing. Not necessarily the product itself. We are putting smart tags on all of our cans. So, you know, that's something that's coming out, but, I'd love to say more, but
to be continued.
Yeah, to be continued.
It's also interesting. Just a use case, a blockchain use case would be to trace that all the products, right? Transparency to have, like Prada does it on theirs. You know, you scan the
that's
tag
incredible.
And
actually,
you can see the whole supply chain and see that it's an actual real product, right? So that could be really interesting for Sesh.
That could be super interesting. Yeah, that's something I'll have to follow up with you on.
Yeah, for sure. We will. Yeah. So Max, how can people find you? How can they reach out to you? How can they purchase Sesh for those interested?
Yeah. So our website is seshproducts.com, SESH products.com.
Okay.
You can purchase on there. We have age verifying technology on there. We're also in many major retailers, Buc-ee's in Texas,
nice.
Quick Trip, AMPM, Circle K, many others, but you can find them on our store locator on our website. And yeah, that's how they can find our products.
Okay. Flavor recommendations. I see we've got mango here.
Mango's my go-to. But I also love our cappuccino flavor.
Okay.
And our mint and wintergreen are our best sellers, but I'm a mango guy.
Got it. Okay. Any final thoughts before we end today's episode? This has been really interesting.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I really appreciate you having me, and hopefully it was a good first episode into a new world.
I know. No, it was really interesting for me, and we should definitely do a follow-up when you want to talk more about blockchain and AI with Sesh.
I'm going to need a little bit of time. Let me wrap my head around that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Max.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks. Special thanks to 4 Labs Digital for producing Deep Dive Podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Deep Dive. You can click the links in the show notes to learn more about each of the initiatives from these sponsors. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share.